Chapter 30. Rare snow fell over the white-capped peaks surrounding Lake Como in northern Italy as Petrov sat with his brother, overlooking as old rosewood chessboard. A post-Christmas lull hung in the air as exhausted nieces and nephews finally settled off to sleep. There were few civilized places left since the troubles began, and this remained one of Petrov's most treasured. Dmitri's wife now cleared their empty glasses, quick to retrieve her hand and allow her sleeve to fall back over the large bruise Petrov was eyeing. Startled, she straightened and hurried out with their empty glasses. "Why?" Petrov inquired once the door to his study clicked closed, watching Dmitri's tongue-rimmed mottled teeth. "Mind your own business." "It's not your business I mind, it's the mistakes. Or have you forgotten, Dover? I warned you to seal up the tunnels." Dmitri glared at his younger brother for several long moments. "I was wondering when you were going to throw that in my face." "When will you learn?" "Mia's the one learning, not me." Petrov's mouth firmed as he moved his bishop across the board, recognizing his father's tone in Dmitri's voice. Rage is the voice of inadequacy, and pain strengthens your opponent, while kindness weakens them. You want to be more careful what you employ and with whom. They always said you were the smart one. Not since we lost Dover. That cost us. Petrov eyed his brother, who'd been in charge that night. SMC are a growing problem. Dmitri moved along, keen not to dwell on his own shortcomings, but not insurmountable. "No?" Petrov's stone expression fixed on the chessboard. "They hold Europe for now, but not its people. The SMC excel in skill. They have better weapons, but they lack public appeal. We, on the other hand, are a family. People will fight for family, not for a military power." Dmitri's eyes narrowed on him, mouth souring. "How do you do it? How do you always know what to do?" "People will tell you what they want, if you care to listen." Petrov shrugged and moved his knight into place. "Checkmate." He saw Dmitri's brow furrow. "When you're familiar with the game, you can anticipate situations, but familiarize yourself with the player, and the game is yours." "Pick that up from one of your books?" Dmitri scoffed. "Avoiding father's heavy hand," Petrov admitted, throwing back an espresso. "You want to win. Patterns and perspective. That's all you need." He eyed his brother critically, and a little self-control. "What are you going to do about Ivan? It will split the family when word gets out, and it will. No way round that." Dmitri smiled, enjoying the pressure being applied to his younger brother, but Petrov relaxed back in his chair, seemingly unfazed. The kid was proving troublesome, bright enough to secure blackmail material, stupid enough to think he could use it on them. There's always a way. As consigliere, Petrov was used to keeping the peace, managing people in impossible situations alongside running several businesses in emerging enterprises, which he either founded or provided substantial investment. The following morning, he sped down the meandering roads beside Lake Como towards his Milan office. Orsini Construction occupied the entire top floor. They specialized in eco-housing and on-site recycling of building waste, which they repurposed for 3D printing, for large-scale concrete construction. At his office, he finished up a meeting and rounded up a few matters before jetting off to London, England. The Volkov, the largest side of the 12-tribe family, had secured key areas in Africa and parts of Asia, while the rest of the family were making great progress across North America. Their rivals in the East proved to be a significant thorn in his side, and a private mercenary group, SMC, now dominated most of Europe thanks to his brother's shortcomings. As he sat back on the private jet, strong, lean fingers flicked through this new proposal. He found that times of trouble increased resourcefulness, accelerating creativity and ingenuity, igniting rapid advancement. A technical revolution was on the horizon, and he intended to keep himself and the family at his forefront. Although fiat systems had fallen flat in the wake of global civil war, blockchain technology had thrived long into the Troubles and allowed those with it to continue to buy and sell with relative ease. His eyes brushed over the projected cover of Vogue and the pretty brunette who was now a part of his business plan, his fiancée. Returning to the brief, he marveled at the advancements made. The tech industry's advancement was out of this world, but they paled in comparison to the whispers of genetic engineering at Morrigan's clinic. Their initial paper was controversial, and any further advancements were simply the subject of rumor. But from experience, He found rumors of this nature were rooted in deception or revelation. It wouldn't take him long to establish which. A background check, an in-person chat, followed by a look around to get a feel for things. Instinct and intuition had always served him well. Pulling up on the east side of London a few hours later, he stepped out from his Maserati, draping his jacket over the back seat before rolling up crisp white sleeves, pleased with what he found so far. Dust and rubble lay either side of the old surgery, but striding down disheveled steps, he could smell it. Opportunity. Morgan glanced up from the old computer she tapped away on and dusted herself off as he strode in. Steely gaze flicking to where Grace watched him in Mobius, he smiled, before turning to Morgan's welcome. She breezed through a breakdown of what she'd developed so far, startled at the level of insight he showed in his line of questioning. When Petrov left over 12 hours later, he was surer than ever of their partnership. Morgan was a bright young scientist, desperate and hungry for progress, to push the limits of what was possible, and he was more than happy to pick up the tab. It wasn't just the large percentage of profit her work would likely yield, but her influence once he made her a household name. The fact of the matter was that this little endeavor would cost him pennies. The facilities she required could be constructed in-house through his own company, while his boys would ensure security, keeping them employed. It didn't hurt that he sensed something good about the deal either. He was continually planting seeds for the future, which as he stared out at the dust and rubble, looked very bright indeed. Asterisk. How did you come by all this? Velda stared at the holographic dossiers in disbelief before letting her gaze drift over the crumbling walls of Annika's flat. It was the stuff of nightmares. There was a world of difference between where they were and where they should be. Despondent, her gaze fell back to the old laptop and flickering projections, missing her desk and usual resources more than ever. She used to be able to make a difference. Reams of documents flickered through the old 3D projection, which, like her, may as well be extinct, given what they were up against. Her eyes glanced up at the narrow basement window. It felt about right. Her lips thinned. They were already about 6 feet under, though Annika hadn't seemed to realize. Whistleblowers. They sent it all in after Aile's initial leak. More than we could read in a year. AI helped us filter through and summarize. But the sources, the evidence, it's all there. Velda stared in disbelief. There was nothing to be done. What could be? They woke to a ticking time bomb too late. From proxy wars, human trafficking programs, eugenics and inhumane global human trials, to geoengineering aimed at controlling food and water supplies. It resembled the stuff of Nazi Germany on a global stage. The public, like cattle. Algorithms induced entire populations into a form of tonic immobility. Its main success, taking any humanity out of the decision-making process. Profits and power were paramount, while populations and their leaders were distracted by global conflict and political battles, consumed by consumerism. Others were hypnotized, absorbed in celebrity worlds or dizzied on social media platforms, unable to differentiate what was real from what wasn't. Humans were trained not to speak out, as the algorithm picked off those at the fringe who did, working to divide populations over time. People, even those behind the program, leaders of nations, became like cattle, reacting, not thinking, distracted, unable to see the bigger picture. Fear insisting, they placed blind faith in a self-learning system they could not fully understand or hope to control, in algorithms designed for war against people, against human concerns. In effect, they taught themselves to bake the bricks for their own abattoir. From the processed food they bought to the sedentary lifestyle they claimed, social norms became a tyrannical dictator, turning work ethic into the notion that work makes one free. Those who prioritized family networks and nurturing roles were ostracized by their community, and a person's value was determined by income, leaving few nurturing figures paying attention to what was happening. Groups who were different, individuals who were vulnerable or dependent, were deemed not human and slaughtered or exploited, encouraged to sell parts of themselves morally or physically. Prolonged, high-stress states lowered energy levels and left people prone to distraction, burnout, and herd mentality. Many were riddled with physical and psychological illness as a result of family breakdown, lack of exercise, and poor diet, with 66% addicted to prescription drugs and 21% on illicit ones. The remaining 13% still depended on the monster of a system they had created, the algorithm which demanded profit and power before people, fostering addiction in all its forms. Farmland had been bought up, those who owned it forced out of business, and geoengineering rendered the little that was left largely unusable, the public eventually fully reliant on food printing and their manufacturers. It was painful to see how out of control, how utterly mad things had become. Velda's heart sank. The worst part was she wasn't sure she could see a way out of it. For those who came to power in that mess, how they could have possibly hit the brakes on it. All global powers had been running full steam toward a cliff edge, willing to compromise anything of others for an edge over their competition. Not one of them dared hit the moral brake for fear the others would overtake. They couldn't afford to lose the upper hand, their share of this monster. That would have doomed their population to whatever the new dominant power would force on them. So instead, they careered off the edge into these hellish depths together, a form of mutual self-destruction. "We can turn it around," Annika bounced out of her seat to Velda's annoyance, clearly oblivious to the reality they faced. "Together we can build something by the people, for the people, to fix—" But Velda shook her head, unsure where to start. "I don't know how to get them to listen, let alone trust again. People want to believe. Maybe before, but now?" Velda shook her head. It felt like she'd had the shit knocked out of her. Better out than in. The thought surfaced as Annika spun back from where she paced, clearly unable to sit. "People will listen. You just need the right platform, and they need someone to remind them that together we can build a world worth fighting for. We have no soldiers, no land, no weapons." "You don't need it," Annika said with a waft of her hand. "You just need the people. Give them hope, and they'll give you the rest."